Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Modern Farming Podcast. Hey, we are still really excited about last week's discussion with Aaron Martin. Just a really incredible discussion that we're certainly going to elaborate on. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that or watch that on YouTube, I encourage you to jump in there. There was a little bit, guys, something for everybody in that last week. There was a little bit of science, there was a little bit of consumer advocacy, and just a really great story from Aaron. So just want to really encourage everybody. That was a great episode. We had a ton of fun. So if nothing else, jump on and check us out, because I think we had the most fun we've had yet in 6 episodes. So, but today, look, hey, we're really excited as well. Today, we wanted to share a little bit about, how we all turned our passion into a profitable business. We say that loosely, kind of tongue in cheek. It's not just about the profit, right? It's about the passion that we all have for agriculture and the environment and the state that we all live in, but mostly just the business of producing food, and the passion that goes along with empowering others and really bringing others along, or informing others. Some of the things that I love most about my job is just that ability to inform others. So, Logan, if you could maybe share with us, I mean, we say it every week, but your passion is so so close to like just a really fun hobby that turned into a really great business. Brad and I seem to have gone through the business, and now we're like, hey, let's make this a little bit more of a hobby, make it a little more fun. But you truly have taken something that at least I view as really fun and kind of hobby like, and turned it into just an incredible business. So if you could maybe jump in there and tell us a little bit about your business and what you how you've turned your passion into a profitable entity.
Yeah, so from the get-go, I've always been in beekeeping, fifth generation. My grandfather's coined as the grandfather of southeastern beekeeping. And you're right, majority of beekeepers in Florida are hobbyists. They do it on the side. They have 1 to 10 hives. And I was outside of Gainesville still, and I was thinking of ways I can continue on the family business, being away from my family's business. My family's business is in Chipley. So Gainesville to Chipley, that's quite a bit of a distance, and quite a bit of a distance to remain relevant in it. So I was brainstorming with my granddaddy, and he said, your time is valuable, your knowledge is valuable, why don't you share it? And then he said that the Cutsmen know 2 things, and none of them are secrets, and that's the gospel of Jesus Christ and beekeeping. And so that's what I got started into the consulting business. But once I started school, I kind of let it go. I just got so busy with classes and with other responsibilities that at that time, it wasn't an income. It was just a little side hustle that made me money here and there because, let me be honest with you, I had no idea how to budget. I had no idea how to set standards of prices. So I was absolutely terrible at it. But when I got married and my wife needed money to go to school herself, I remembered that little nugget in the back of my brain, and I thought, maybe I should revisit what Granddaddy said and start consulting people. And I remember the 10 people I reached out to, all of them had underneath 10 hives. 2 of them now are commercial sized. One of them is considered a beyond a hobbyist, but not quite a commercial, called a sideliner. And it blossomed from there. And I like to say my business model is still not a great one. I like to put myself out of business. I want you to get so independent you don't need me anymore. And I'm sure that is the goal for all consultants, is to ensure the most profitability, the most efficiency. And if you're not, maybe reevaluate why you're doing it. Obviously, I alluded to, I got started doing it because I need a little bit more money. But beyond that, the reasons of the hows, the whys, the purpose is certainly to help people, because I got a few notes here, and I feel like we could go around the room and share one each and talk about them a little bit and then move on to the next one.
Sure.
But my first one here is I love to watch people grow into their own, making their own business, making their own decisions. Because if you ask a beekeeper, if you ask 10 of them the same question, you'll get 12 different answers, and helping them find what works for them, helping them find their marketplace, their clientele, and watch them become what they want to be. And it's nice to know that I play a part in helping them along the way.
Yeah. No, so one of the things that, when you were kind of asking me these questions the other day, I wrote down sort of this. I mean, one of them is, just finding unique solutions to problems.
Right.
It's really fun to, sort of play bartender, and, I get to talk with growers about what their true challenge is on the farm. And I say that because I came from the retail sector where, we were kind of driven by, um, what the organization wanted us to sell as sales agronomists, right? So we had large deals with like Bayer or Monsanto back when they were a thing. Syngenta sells a lot of chemistry, and Coke sells a lot of fertilizer, and Mosaic sells a lot of phosphates. We had contracts with them that were set in stone the prior fall. So, a lot of these retailers in the Midwest today are going to the field with products that were decided on last November. And there was kind of this call sheet that I had, that, these were the products we were going to promote or recommend. Not that we weren't identifying problems and solving them, but those problems led to a specific product. Now, as an independent, or a consultant, I have the luxury, or I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity that I do have to speak to growers as a consultant. And it's really just finding those unique solutions for some really difficult problems. And as Brad knows, some of these problems have been around for a really long time, and some of the solutions that we have are new to them, but kind of, you know, old news to a lot of people. But it's been fun to be able to kind of introduce those to the grower today.
Yeah, because being a consultant, you're talking to this guy, you're talking to that guy, you see how this works, you see how that works, and as it's our passion, we really have a deep knowledge and understanding of the intricacies and the complexities of how the gears rotate with each other, and you're like, oh, that works because of this, this works because of that, and you're able to have a full comprehension. I get calls all the time of commercial beekeepers just like that. They've never heard of it done this way, but it's old news to this guy,
Yeah.
and it's old news to this country, but it's new methods to this country. And I always enjoy educating the guy that does it all for his entire livelihood, and he's like, I don't understand what you just said, but I'm going to try it and I'm going to see if it works. And I always try to tell people in all aspects of life, you know, do your own research, find what works for you, and don't just do it because your dad or your granddad did it. Do it
Mhm.
because you understand why it works and what it does.
Yeah, I think the most destructive phrase in agriculture is, That's the way dad did it. That's the way grandpa did it. That's the way I do it." Right?
Yeah.
A and I think maybe that's going away a little bit as a new generation has really fully taken over the farm. Grandpa's kind of out of it, or for the most part out of it. Not that you
Yeah.
don't take his advice, but grandpa's probably out of a lot of these operations. And so now you've got dad and son, and the son may be my age, right? He may be mid 40s, mid 50s, and dad may be 70 or 80. So so you have, for a long time there though, there was that wall. It was like, well, why do we do it this way? I don't know. Grandpa
Yeah.
did it, dad did it, and that's the way we've always done it.
And I was really fortunate. My granddad always said that he felt blessed that he retired when he did, because he couldn't handle some of the things that beekeepers today had to face. But he says that, and even in his retirement, he did more work in retirement than he did ever when he was working. He still was the spearhead for research. He still understood pretty much anything and everything. He went to several different countries teaching them how to be better beekeepers. And the tracheal mite came, the varroa mite came, small hive beetle came, and he was in all of them. And he says he didn't face them, but he was the chief of apiary when varroa did come. He was transitioning to the chief of apiary when the tracheal mite came. It's a whole story. It's maybe for another episode. But yeah, I was very fortunate that my granddad, he didn't have the philosophy, "Well, do it because I told you to do it, and I won't explain why." He really taught me, and I'm very privileged and blessed that I was under his tutelage and under the tutelage of Dr. Jamie Ellis at UF. And some of my family members say that they understand uh, the bees to an extent, but I have the deeper knowledge of both the whys, the whats, and the hows. And that's why I really take a lot of pride in my family and my last name. And, I tried to make my own name. I tried to be like, well, granddaddy set the field for me. He planted that tree, and I always struggled a lot. Like, how am I going to get out of his shadow? How am I going to make a name for myself? And Brad probably knows who it is, but um, I don't want to share their name to keep it still personal. But their granddad entered the Hall of Fame the same year my granddad did, and they were citrus growers. And she told me, it's not about leaving the shadow. It's about extending the shadow of the tree, extending the shade of the tree, and making it a bigger tree, a better shade for the next generation. It's never about filling someone's shoes or leaving the shadow entirely. It's the family tree. And so that's how I try to look at it when it comes to, like, making a name for myself. And as you said, granddad and dad obviously had things that they did, but making it my own.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we've talked about it, Brad and I have talked about it several times here. There's a ton of new technology.
Yeah. Yeah, and like AI hives, like there's hives in California by certain companies that will literally treat the hives on a individual basis, and they will let you know what hives need attention for what things. And it's just incredible what some of this technology can do. And like, if you told me, 10 or 20 years ago that we'd have computers checking bees, I'd probably laugh at you. I'm still maybe this is an example of me being an old head. I still cannot fathom taking away the human aspect of beekeeping, because there's one thing that a computer cannot do, and that is to be able to relate and have a relationship with its livestock. Um, I understand the bees from the perspective of multiple different cultures. I understand bees from a extensive background in history, which a computer can understand history and know history. But to be able to apply different methods, like a computer can't take a frame and checkerboard it, and then if the bees don't react, move one in. There's so much programming that you would have to do with this AI that may be possible, but the human aspect of innovation is just something that I feel like a computer will never be able to mimic or come close to, because I can do multiple different methods. I can mesh them together. I can see what works, and if it doesn't work, I come back and I tweak it just a little bit. But that ability to work on the fly and be highly adaptable, I just don't see how these AI hives will replace the human aspect of it. And that's me getting on my old head soapbox there for a little bit. But the technology is incredibly important because, I mean, regardless if I say that, I can still acknowledge that this computer stuff is one of the best one of the best aids that you can have that solidify what you're thinking, that maybe give you an inclination of, well, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. So
Mhm.
I feel like that it is an extremely powerful aid, but I just hope that people realize that um, we're the top dog here. We're here to feed ourselves and to do our passion. Why would you want a computer to take away what you love? Certainly help you, but not take away from.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree.
But uh, but Brad, what are some of your pros that you got written down from our conversation?
Yeah, and y'all know my story, how I got to where I am. But
Mhm.
I was a lifelong citrus grower and cattle rancher, and it's a long story. We won't go into it, but I kind of lost the farm and kind of thought I was out of ag for the rest of my life. I was going down other avenues, and then I started studying the soil health thing pretty intensely about 8 years ago, and as that started progressing, after I was learning and doing trials and doing my own research, and as I started consulting, after I had learned enough to where I thought I could help growers, it was, for me now, it's just the diversity in crops that I get to work with. Because I mean, soil is, that impacts, everything, whether it's perennial tree crops or row crops or grass and sod or all the way to livestock. And so it's really just, I have my fingers in a little bit of everything. In fact, just yesterday, had my first meeting with a scalable commercial cattle rancher that wants to start growing grass-fed beef. And so I had a lot of interest in that 8 years ago in the beginning, and it never really materialized with a client. But so now there's this large grower that wants me to help him. So that's getting into, when you hear about the mob grazing, where you're packing cattle or other livestock into tight places, as a soil improvement tool, and as as to grow quality beef or sheep or pigs or whatever it is. So I had that meeting yesterday, and it went right into the technology, because there's technology out now where you're not having to put in all these electrical fences and move them around constantly, which is pretty labor intensive. Now there's collars that run off satellite, that are GPS, that have a base station where you could be sitting in the Bahamas on your cell phone and moving your cattle around, and it simplifies it. Because I've always wanted to take that technology into row crops and perennial crops, but a grower just isn't going to want to do it when he's having to think about moving the fences and the water, and there's a lot of complicating things to that.
Yeah.
So it's just the diversity that I get to deal with, and people want to learn. You steer them in the right directions, and they can pick a lot of this up on their own.
Yeah. You brought up something about, electricity. There's a new thing on the market that I am a huge supporter of, and a lot of people have forgotten the cluster of bees are so important to the regulation of temperature, to the brood health, et cetera, et cetera. Now there's this new technology on the market that puts coils inside the beehive and uses solar energy to heat those coils, and it keeps the cluster warm through the winter, and it's just incredible. But I think one word that you brought up, diversity, and just the incredible networking you've done across disciplines of ag, is something I wrote down, but a little bit different. Um, you know, for a beekeeper, it's pollination contracts is how you network within ag itself. But for me as a consultant, the network that I can do just outside the bee industry, because a lot of my clientele, I would say 70 to 80% of my clientele are considered hobbyists or sideliners. And so they have different avenues, as you said, that are outside the realm of agriculture. Some of them are, their toes in it from being a arborist and cutting down trees as land clearing services. I got roofers, I got mechanics, plumbers, I got a, a neurosurgeon in Gainesville. I have a professor in nursing. I have a guy that clams for a living. That's agriculture, but different than what I do. But it's the gathering network with both these people and with those other commercial guys and the scientific folks that have really benefited me, because I'll barter trade. I'm not ashamed to admit it. If I had broken pipes one time, and I barter trade a few visits of bees to help save me a few $100s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the networking.
I agree
Granddaddy's
with that.
mom had, yeah.
I've been extremely lucky. Agriculture, I didn't drive my first tractor until I was 28 years old. So I didn't grow up on a farm or anything. I kind of fell into this after college. But since then, man, I have met so many incredible people. 20 years ago, I was able to do some really cool stuff in Hawaii. Then I was able to travel to South and Central America, Brazil, Argentina, um, do a lot of farming there with an organization. Met some really incredible people on a totally different spectrum than we all are. And then just like last week, having conversations with people like Aaron Martin, and then several other guests that we're going to have on the show here, meeting you and Brad. Brad and I met a couple of years ago through a mutual friend. It's been incredible the amount of people and the diversity of crops and backgrounds that I have been able to interact with and create a relationship with, and then go back and lean on. When you have something that you just can't wrap your head around, or on the business side of what we do, if you run into an issue, like how do you get things financed? What's the best way to go and invest in something? Do you just run out there and pay for it in cash, or is it wiser to take a little bit of a loan out or a line of credit? Those people who have been in the industry for a long time, who have owned their own businesses or ran their own ag operation, which is just an enormous business in its own, have been able to help me, not just through the nuts and bolts of it or the dollars and cents of it, but the other side of it too, which is, I remember one of my good friends, a mentor early on, he noticed how much I was working, and he told me that, Nick, you could work 200 hours, and at the end of the day, no one's going to care but your family. And he
That's
wasn't
tough.
saying that he wasn't saying that they were going to be happy, right? He was
Right.
he was letting me know that if you keep doing this, you're going to end up without a job and without a family, because everyone's going to leave you and you're just a number. And that was
Yeah.
kind of hard to understand at the time, because I was a company guy. Like I bled for this company. I thought I would be there forever. And that wasn't the case. I was sort of just a number. But just to your point, the networking, the doors that have opened, the incredible amount of people that I've met through all industries, not just agriculture, have been just probably the biggest blessing that I've had through my career so far.
Yeah, that's maybe a good transition to a couple other things that I have written down on the other side of the column. If you're an introvert, it's definitely not a job for you. And I think I am a hybrid. I am a situational extrovert. If you're talking about pollinators, I blossom out. But for the most part, I would want to be the other guy, not the guy that the spotlight is on. And the constant need of networking forces you out of your comfort zone. And so if you're not ready for that, then maybe wait a little bit. And the long hours, like you said, that's something that I've had to swallow. Is I have a biblical responsibility in my personal faith to provide and protect, and provide is important, but you got to provide in many other ways, because You got to provide in an emotional way, and you have to be present. Like you said, 20 years from now, no one's going to remember how hard I worked except for my family. And they're not going to remember what I did because they weren't going to be with me. They're going to remember my absence. And so that is a huge balance right there. The long hours and high pressure, dealing with someone else's livelihood. Like if I fail, they fail.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to put on someone. And, you have to understand the repercussions of what failure means. And when they succeed, you succeed. Like all the time, people are like, Logan, you're selling honey? I said, well, yeah, but I would rather you buy it from them because it's more lucrative for me. It makes me look a little bit better. And so, yeah, it's it's not
challenges.
for the weak.
Yeah, I mean, Brad. I mean, you've done both, right? You've owned a farm, you farmed, and then now you run a consulting business. But either way, a business is a business, and the challenges don't go away.
No, you're exactly right. And it's a bit of a financial burden, especially in the beginning, because I just want these guys to succeed. They and the soil health thing, it's hard to grasp. Everybody starts just like I did. You watch a couple of YouTube videos, you read some books, and sometimes it gets a little oversimplified. You can just focus on some biology and you don't need fertilizer anymore. And it gets deeper than that. It's a very complex system, and I'm dealing mostly with Florida sand that holds nothing. So, you always need fertilizer. So it's a challenge because you start working with these farmers and they grasp it. And a lot of them have already dug into the Elaine Inghams and then, they got it. But it's, I've been at this 8 years and, I still take plant physiology and plant pathology classes to try to understand why photosynthesis works, and so it's very complex, and you want them to know all this because it's just like Logan alluded to. At some point, I want them to kick me to the curb and go do what they do, so I can move on to the next one. So, but it's just very rewarding all the way around.
It is extremely rewarding to see them get it. Like when I look at someone, I'm talking to them, I can pretty much tell if they're retaining it, absorbing it, or if it's just going way over their head. And that's a good cue for me to be like, all right, well, I've info dumped you enough. Let's wait for tomorrow. And, when it clicks, it clicks. And it's a silly saying, but it's true. When they get it, they get it. If they don't, they don't. And to be able to see that growth, both on a personal level and a business level, it's great to help people. And but that's you brought up understanding it. And one thing I have on the bad column is just people being ignorant, and people don't like that word anymore.
You have people you work with that are ignorant.
Yeah, the people
That's a
have
nice way of putting that, Logan. I appreciate how diplomatic you are with that, but I agree with you 100%. I know
they
exactly
put this
what you're saying.
very extreme negative connotation with ignorancy, and I'm ignorant to cattle. If you ask me something about a meat production, pig production, even fisheries, I don't know what I'm talking about. Just as much as I do. I'm ignorant, and I'm not afraid to say what I'm ignorant in. I am bold where I know I'm knowledgeable in, and I hope that I'm reserved where I don't know anything, because even a fool is deemed wise if he keeps his mouth shut. That's found in Proverbs. But, on the other side, people asking me for services, they got bees in their wall, right? They call me out, and I give them a price for my clients, because I don't deal with cutting people's bees out of their wall. There's too much insurance and liability involved. But some of my clientele do go out of their way to get the insurance, get the proper equipment like a bee vac, and understanding carpentry to cut open a wall and repair it. But But when they say that's too much, and then they go on Facebook Marketplace or Facebook forums and they find someone to do it free, and you get what you pay for. They do a terrible job, and then they call me because the problem's still not fixed, or 6 months later found out that they didn't pretty much didn't do it at all. And it's very frustrating when you try to explain it to someone and tell them about the expenses. Like, feral colonies have to be requeened per Florida law. You cannot keep unknown stock. You cannot keep feral bees. And there's many different reasons for that. And that can be a whole nother episode of itself. But to just keep it straight and short and sweet and to the point, you have to requeen feral colonies. That's already $40 out the gate. Then you can add on the lower level, like if you're buying unpainted, unassembled equipment, $60 for the lid, box, and bottom board, not including the frames. So, $80 to $100 on the lower estimate. So now I'm already at $100 to $120. And then I have to treat those bees. That's $60 because I'm not going to introduce more mites to my bee yards. And then it's the time and effort, the gas, getting them there. And some guys even put those hives in a completely different yard, and they sometimes have to rent that yard. And so that's a whole nother expense of in itself. So if you're not putting your base pay, the bare minimum at $200 to start out with, you're losing money.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate.
I always say that in reality, we can never pass on the charge of what we truly cost, because
Right.
we'd price ourselves out of the market. You look at Brad, right? Eons of information, knowledge, just local knowledge. How do you put a price tag on that, right? Like, how do you put an hourly wage on that? And I feel the same way. Like, one of the challenges that I wrote down, Logan, is that I'm everything, right? I'm the marketing, I'm the sales guy, I'm the mechanic, right? When something breaks down, I got to fix it. I was underneath my daughter's car all weekend. Like, I can barely lift my arm, my shoulder. All I did is change the damn alternator. But you're everything. You're the janitor at the end of the day. I empty my trash can at my office. And before, when I worked for an organization, a lot of that was taken care of. I just jumped in the truck. The insurance was paid for, the cell phone was paid for, the computer was paid for. I didn't worry about fuel, and I didn't worry about oil changes. It just got done. I went somewhere, I swiped a card, it got done. Well, now I own all that. I own all that debt. I own all that risk, and it's really hard to pencil that out per job and pass that on an acre basis for me. You'll just never be able to charge exactly what it cost me to get out there. I don't know how many times, Brad, that you do this, but there's more times than not that I arrive to a field that I'm not necessarily selling something that day to that acre.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's a lot for me. Like a lot, like dealing in the cattle. There's not a lot of inputs that I would sell him, maybe other than some cover crop seed. It's just going to be a pure consulting, and that's kind of a slippery slope. When you're in my mind, a true consultant doesn't endorse or sell anything.
Right.
But as you and I know, as you get into this longer and longer, you find things that are really certain tools that do really good things, and then you're just kind of backing those things. So there's clients that I work with that are large scale, and they use a couple of things, or they buy some seed, and I'm not charging them for my time anymore. And it's the double dipping thing. But so it's all a case by case basis. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that, as far as like being endorsed, from my perspective, I was approached by a few people that wanted to endorse me and me sell their product. And I felt like it was almost being dishonest to the beekeeper, like trying to force my endorsement onto them. Like, oh, you really need to use this, when,
Right.
do they really? Do they really need it? So I I don't want to offend anyone that is out there that consults, that does have endorsements. I think it's a great way to have supplement income and to support your business, especially if you use it often. But there are some companies out there that trivial that the beekeeper actually needs it or not.
Yeah,
So I
and
get, like
I
you
think
said, case by case.
yeah, and I think I toe that line as well as Brad does. You know, the beauty of what we're able to do today with technology is we can prove it in the field, where previously for 20 plus years I sold a product that was like, you know, on paper, you know, here's an ad for some sort of fertilizer, micronutrient fertilizer. It was like, oh yeah, in our data or in our trials in 50 states, it showed a 3 bushel increase on soybeans. Great, right? And we'd be able to just kind of present that flyer and show the fancy data that over replicated trials we had a three bushel increase. But I was never able to show that specifically to the grower until the end of the year. Maybe we got 3 bushels, maybe we didn't. That 3 bushels was highly dependent on a lot of different things, not just the input that I sold them. However, what Brad and I are able to do today with a lot of the products we promote or recommend, I should say, is that we have tools that allow us to show in real time what's going on in the soil. Or yesterday, I had a really great phone call with a strawberry grower here in Florida, who, you know, at this time of year, sugars and bricks are a big deal. We're able to go out to the field, you know, X amount of days after an application of a product and show the increase in bricks versus the untreated field. And so, yeah, I agree 100%. Where if you're just promoting a product just to get a kickback, that's probably not integrous work. But if you're promoting a product, to Brad's point, because we know, one, we know it works, but two, I could run a series of analysis on either the fruit itself or the tissue sample or the soil and show you, compare it versus treated and untreated, that these are actually moving the needle in the field. So I do feel very confident, and I sleep well at night knowing that I'm recommending products that I'm not just telling them work, I'm showing them that they do work in the field.
Yeah.
And there's some new stuff out there in the bee industry that is not new as far as the product itself, but it's new in how it can be applied, and it works really well. And it is a little bit expensive, but I tell people, I say it's honey safe, which is rare in products. You
Mhm.
can continue to make honey with it and treat the varroa, and it's expensive, but you get a lot. Like the application is 2 strips per 5 frames of brood or 5 frames of bees, depending on which one you buy, and you get like 300 to 600 strips. And as long as you save it, you get your money's worth out of it. But some people just can't afford $99 after the consulting fee, after they pay their bills, after et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it is. We've mentioned it a couple of times over. I try to humanize the situation and be like,
Mhm.
you could get away with waiting for 3 to 4 weeks, but after that 4 week period, you're really going to have to do something. And, that goes into like people not listening to you.
Mhm.
I come back 4 weeks and it didn't happen. And it didn't happen because they couldn't afford it. It didn't happen because they just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm having to now siphon, because I consult over 4,000 in Florida alone. I consult close to 200 in Kenya, 100 in the Philippines, a few hundred in the Caribbean, and a few hundred in Canada. And so, whenever I have someone not listening to me, it's not worth my time anymore. I'm not going to get blamed for your colonies dying after I gave you the step by step of how to fix the issue. And sometimes it's not step by step. Sometimes it's like a crystal ball, right? Sometimes it's like, this is looking like it's going to happen,
Yeah.
so let's nip it in the bud before it does. And so I wonder if you guys ever face that. Do you guys have anyone just not listen to your advice or consulting knowledge?
Yeah, a lot of times it's just like you said, getting it implemented.
Hmm.
Because there's and and what I do, I'm building soil, which is it's a long-term investment, whether you're cover cropping, composting, implementing animals. I mean, but it's a long-term investment. But that farmer, he can't afford to not make money this year. So we've got to figure it costs money to do all those soil building things. So but you have to make sure he's profitable at the end of the year. And that's why sometimes it takes tools. It takes tools that we have to feed microbes now. We're doing things to feed microbes later. We have to do things to keep that system functioning. So at the end of the year, he's not going bankrupt, essentially. So it's
Right.
so it's a challenge.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I would agree. I mean, there's you said it earlier. I mean, when we say ignorant, it's not just that the fact that ignorant doesn't mean you're stupid, right? Like ignorant means that you just don't understand enough about this one factor on your farm that we might have some experience with. So I think that the real challenge is educating the grower on something that is kind of outside of their knowledge base or something they've never dealt with. And I think a really good example of that right now is I think there's a whole bunch of people out there, especially in the last 2 months, who are starting to realize the real cost of raising chickens, the real cost of their dozen eggs, because I've flirted around the idea myself. I've had chickens on and off in my life in different places that I lived, and I keep telling myself, I'm like, I know that it's not. I can't raise a dozen eggs for $6. I probably couldn't do it. I'm not set up for it. I don't have the space. If I had 50 chickens, like I could probably do a $2 dozen. I can't. I've got neighbors, right? So I think there's a whole bunch of people who are starting to figure out that, this whole agriculture thing, whether it's raising chickens, bees, or corn, or, citrus, or strawberries, or tomatoes, there's so much that goes into it. Everybody always asks me, especially this time of year, oh, what should I plant in my garden? What should I do? How should I prep it? And I'm always like, let's back up. Like, why do you have such a large garden? Like, oh, we want to save money, and I want to. I'm like, well, you're not going to save anything. You're going to have like $12 tomatoes. If your goal is to have really healthy food, and you have control of what input you put on your food that you want to feed your family and kids, that's a whole different story. I don't think there's a cost you could put on that. And if you could afford it, go ahead and do it. But if you just want to do this stuff because you're trying to do it cheaper, there's a reason why agriculture and everything we all do is scalable, because scalability makes it makes it affordable. And I think that's a part of this whole system that I think that a lot of individual consumers don't fully understand. So when we do go and consult for small landowners or small crop guys, some of them don't understand why my costs are where they're at. A lot of that is the most of my cost is just product, right? Getting product to the grower costs a little bit of money. Not everything is made down the street, and I certainly don't manufacture anything in my garage. So everything gets, shipped here in either a container or a truckload, and that cost is highly dependent on oil pricing and how much trucking is going on at the time, or how much the rail is backed up. So all these costs are variables to us, that I think the average consumer or even the average grower doesn't fully understand. And even on a large part, even very large growers, I have some 20,000 acre growers in the Midwest, and there's always a pushback on price. It's never a pushback on, do they trust my input? Do they trust my recommendations? I think I've proven that. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be talking to them. But it's always like, man, how do we get this cheaper, Nick? And my answer is always pretty simple as a sales guy. Well, we order more. We gotta do more, and that's the realities of, I think, the world and agriculture especially is volume brings pricing down, right? Volume makes things a little bit cheaper to do. It's just so much cheaper to make 20,000 gallons of a product than it is to make two. And even these podcasts are the same thing. It's really hard for us. We tried early on, if you remember, we tried early on to make like 1 or 5 minute podcasts, right? That was impossible for us to do. We couldn't do it. We never got a very short podcast in, and it's because we thought YouTube had some rules that we're trying to follow. It's easier to make a 1 hour podcast than it is a 20-minute podcast.
That's true. That's true.
Because and it's the same thing on the farm, or I assume what you do, Logan. It's probably easier to manage a larger operation than it is
Oh,
just
yeah.
a single one in someone's backyard.
Yeah, and I really liked what you said about the chickens because I even said it yesterday. Some guy was complaining about he lived pretty close to me, and I offered him a ridiculously low price of like $50 to go out there. And he's like, "Why am I paying you $50? You just live down the road." And we went through it. Why do you have bees? Why want free honey? Oh, I can't tell you how many times people say they want free honey. And, they said, well, granddaddy did it back in the day and he just left the bees alone and they survived and got honey. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I said, well, what you're doing wrong is you got the word free in your mind. And, you know, just like eggs, if you want honey that's cheap, just go to your farmer's market and buy it local. Don't spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get started and then hundreds and hundreds of dollars to restart and then kill livestock because you are steward, you're their keeper. It's your job to keep them alive just to get free honey.
Yeah. The men and women that are selling to, the businesses that are selling to Publix or Kroger or Walmart or Costco, they've already paid for their failures. The average consumer to go and try to do it themselves has to pay for their early failures, which is in everything. There's the learning curve. And, you don't just go out there and start a 20-acre farm and not lose anything. The learning curve is real. You could have the best advice from Brad and Logan and still make a mistake. You forgot to turn something off. You had some irrigation running, and you forgot to turn it off because you know what? You're still a mom or a dad, and you still had to cook dinner. But 7 o'clock became midnight, and then 3 a.m. Oh shoot! I forgot to turn off the irrigation, and now you flooded a field. So I think that everybody's getting that sort of the saying of mess around and find out
Yeah.
kind of thing
Or
right now.
why didn't we stop the hurricane from coming? There's just some unpredictabilities and uncertainties that are with everything. And in the agribusiness, we are at the mercy of the rain and the sun. But I think this episode really shows the polarization of every agribusiness. We have the flexibility and independence in consulting. There's pros and cons to everything. But I mean, you have to be strong time management. You have to be self-disciplined. You have to be extrovert. You have to be proactive. The ability to handle those inherent uncertainties and demands of the role are very serious ones. But it's our passions. We love to help people. And I think that is the crux of it is we want to help. We want to be of service. And that you have to be in this line of work. But I really appreciate you guys coming out. I'm not as eloquent as you, Nick, so I'll let you do our outro for us.
Yeah, no, I think this was a great conversation as well. And I love what you said there at the end, Logan, and I'll reiterate it. I mean, we also take a ton of risk to do this and provide for our family or our futures. There's a ton of risk in it. There's nothing to fall back on. Like we said earlier, we're the mechanics, we're the janitors, we're the everything. So when you do reach out and you're looking for a consultant, we'd love to help. certainly love to help. And I think we're certainly knowledgeable enough to help you, or at least the best thing about other consultants is if we don't know, we're going to pass you on to the consultant that does know. I don't know if I could say that for every retailer in the world.
Right.
If they don't know, they're going to fake it till they make it. Right. So I will just say that. And great conversation, Logan. Thanks for putting this on and getting us together on this topic, because I think it really is kind of enlightening for a lot of people to hear. But if you haven't done so, I say this every week now, but certainly please jump on our website at the greengenefoundation.org. Please click around there. The organization itself is doing some really amazing things in schools. If you haven't found us on Facebook, please go find us on Facebook. Like and share us. We're trying to promote the podcast here a little bit more going forward. And so also, if you haven't done so, please jump on to YouTube, like and subscribe there as well. And if you haven't had a chance to hear last week's conversation with Aaron, or any one of our previous conversations, please go check it out. And if you like what you hear and you want to know more about any one of the topics that we've talked about in the last 7 or 8 weeks, give it a like, throw a comment. We're still kind of trying to massage our podcast. We don't want to just get on here and talk. We want to give you something that you're not getting somewhere else. So as you like and share these different episodes, it'll kind of give our team an inclination of what direction we should go moving forward. So everybody have an amazing week, and we'll see you here in 2 weeks.
See ya.
Take care.